Okay, here we are. This is the Kennith meeting house. It's another Quaker meeting house. It's located about 2 miles from Chadds Ford towards the south. And back of me is the Baltimore Pike, Route 1 or Kings Highway. This highway in front of me would have been the main artery for the flanking maneuver of the British Army. Now the flanking maneuver that Howe and Cornwallis took was about 2 miles towards the west. In back of me, there was about 7,000 German light infantry, Queens Rangers, cavalry, cannons, and equipment that went along the Baltimore Pike. This was half of Howe and Cornwallis' army. Now this building behind me was the site of the first shots fired during the Battle of Brandywine. As you can see, the structure looks like it would have done today. It was a white building, plain, square. Now Quakers during this time had midweek meetings. Quakers had meetings about 3 times a week. So when the battle came through here, there were people in this building. They were having their midweek meeting. I'll get into that in a minute. Up the road, in this general area, Maxwell's Light Infantry was formed from Chadds Ford. Washington knew that the British were coming down this road. He sent Maxwell, a light infantry corps that was made up of woodsmen, hunters. Now these guys didn't wear really good continental uniforms. They wore hunting frocks. They had light equipment. They had their own Kentucky rifles. And basically they had a cartridge box, a canteen. They had good boots and soles. And they had gaiters that went around the bottom of their feet. That was if they went through briar bushes, trees, they wouldn't hurt their ankles. Now when Maxwell's Light Infantry was in this area, there was a tavern. It was called Welsh's Tavern. Now Welsh's Tavern was near Longwood Gardens today. Now that doesn't exist anymore. During this time, the cavalry was sent out with the Maxwell's Light Infantry to scout the area to find out where the British were coming up this road. Now the British were basically just a little bit further north, just leaving Kenneth Square when Maxwell's Light Infantry was in this area. About a quarter mile down the road, there was Welsh's Tavern. So during this time, some of the guards, some of the horsemen stopped in to have a drink. They went into Welsh's Tavern, they tied their horses to the post, they had some drinks, and as they're doing so, one turns their head and looks out the window, and they see 7,000 redcoats coming down this road. Now you have about 5 guys, their horses are tied up outside and they're drinking. Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to drop their beer, they're going to get on their horses, and they're going to take off. Well, basically, they didn't get time to. The army was on them so fast that they left their horses behind at Welsh's Tavern. They ran. They came to this point right here where Maxwell was in this general area with about 100 of the finest woodsmen in the area. Now, Maxwell's Light Infantry, Washington put them together after noticing that a lot of his losses with the British, because British had light infantry. British had these guys that came out before the main army. They harassed, they killed a lot, and they pushed the Americans back even before the British army even got to Washington's army. So during the summer, or the winter of 1777, Washington put together a corps of light infantry. Now Maxwell was a tough man. He was a woodsman. He knew how to survive in the woods. He was a dead crack shot. He had scouts with them. He had Indians with them. And this guy could hit somebody from 200, at least 200 to 800 yards with his rifle. So he trained men to go into the woods and harass the British. So what we see behind us is the Kenneth Meeting House, like I was saying before. After the invasion over at Welsh's Tavern, the cavalry came to this area. Now there's walls that survive today. That's miraculous. There's a wall that survives. Right where I'm pointing, on the ground behind me, would have been a wall. It would have stretched this way, and it would have went around the cemetery. That wall does not survive. The only defensive wall that Maxwell has is right in front of me. That still survives. I'm going to read an excerpt from a book, the Bruce Munday book again, about this engagement. It says, as the Queen's Rangers and Ferguson's riflemen advanced towards Welch's Tavern, they were met by a number of Maxwell's light infantry for the first time. The elements of the Light Horse had stopped at Welch's Tavern near present-day Longwood Gardens to take early morning refreshments. Glancing out the window, one American saw green uniforms of the lead units. They rapidly left the building. They exchanged bullets. They hit nothing. The Americans only hit their own horses. The Battle of Brandywine had begun at this point. Inside that meeting house, behind me, the Quakers were holding their midweek meeting. One of those attending was Jacob Pierce. He noted that there was an engagement of sort between the forces of Maxwell and the British outside on the lawn of the meeting house. But while there was much noise and confusion without, all was quiet and peaceful within. They didn't come out of there. There was an engagement right where I'm standing. They were having a meeting in that house. They didn't come out. That's really miraculous that some of these people wouldn't even look out the window to see 7,000 British come down this road. Now, a couple other interesting aspects about this area, it's quite historic, is that the defensive wall we're going to look at, and also to my left, there's a mass grave also of Germans, Hessians. Hessians were soldiers who fought for the crown. Now these guys were completely different, Hessian soldiers. They wore long caps with brass or metal plates on them. They had different uniforms, and they had mustaches. Now a lot of the Quaker inhabitants were clean-shaven. They wore brown and a round hat. So when they saw the Hessians, they called them beards on their lips. Now a lot of these Hessians were in the beginning. They were in the front lines as they advanced on this meeting house right here. They were killed. Many of them were killed. There's a mass grave of about 200 individuals that Maxwell and his light infantry killed at this point. The Battle of Brandywine had begun. It begun at Welch's Tavern. People believe it, speculated it happened here at Kenneth Square. Or not Kenneth Square, but this Kenneth meeting house. That is not true. The first shots were fired about 500 yards to the north. This meeting house here it's old. It's 1710. As I'm looking over to my left, or my right, I'm noticing that I have 300 years that it's been in existence since 2010. That's a long time to be in existence. They still hold meetings in here. It's still active. I'm going to now show you where Maxwell made his stand against the Queen's Rangers, Patrick Ferguson's rifles, and the cavalry.